So welcome to the LWV February program, Community Cable Television, Understanding Public, Educational, and Governmental TV. I'm pleased to welcome representatives from our local stations, Karen George, Eric Strouse, and Danika Peterson. I will pass over them to shortly to formally introduce themselves. They are here this evening to share about the public mission of our local community cable stations, their roles in the communities they serve, how stations are governed, how programming is decided, and the legislative efforts to secure public funding. So please feel free to add your questions and chat throughout the program, and we'll have some Q&A time at the end and discussion after the presentation. I look forward to learning more about our local cable providers and the important role they play in our community. Karen, I will turn it over to you to lead off.
Hi, thank you so much. This is Karen George with QCTV. Joining me is Eric Strouse from CTN, Danika Peterson from North Metro Television. We're excited to be with you today to talk about what we do in our communities, and we have been doing this for over 40 years. And you are all familiar faces because we do a lot of public programming in conjunction with organizations like the League of Women Voters and other community programs. Joining us today is Pat Cook from QCTV. He's going to load up the PowerPoint, and that should be on your screen shortly. You can see on this slide that we're going to be focusing some of the franchise revenue and how we are going to be modernizing funding for our public education and government channels. And we'll get a little bit into that, deeper into the conversation. But first, next slide, we'll just do a brief introductions of ourselves, and I will have Eric kick it off.
Thanks, Karen. Eric Strouse with Station Manager for the City of Coon Rapids. Been here for about 30 years now, but we'll get into more production information here shortly. I'll pass it along.
Okay, I couldn't see me. So I'm Danika Peterson. I'm the interim co-executive director at North Metro TV. I'm also the news director at North Metro TV, and I've been leading our election coverage for 20 years now.
Karen George with QCTV. I've been the executive director there since 2012. I see a former commissioner on, Julie Trude, was on our cable commission for a number of years, providing leadership direction, and she also felt very strongly about candidate forums and election activities. We continue to do that today. But about me, I was actually started in the cable business back in 1984, serving as an educational access coordinator. Went off to California and did some local government communications work, came back to Minnesota, worked at the school district for 18 years, and I've been at QCTV since 2012. So next slide, and we'll have Eric talk a little bit about Coon Rapids.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody. Really, all three of our stations are very similar, and we work together a lot. We all love partnering with the League of Women Voters, and thank you for all of that you all do, educating our voters in our cities. The one difference that I have, I guess, than my colleagues, Karen and Danika, is that I'm city governed, as you see on that first at the top of the slide. We are operated by the city of Coon Rapids. I have it a little easier than my colleagues, I think, because I have one city to work with or to deal with sometimes. But they have multiple cities, and that's kind of one of the big differences between us. But so I focus on the city of Coon Rapids. We cover all our city council meetings and planning commission meetings, so about 33 a year, all live. And then also we archive those on YouTube, and we provide closed captioning for all those government meetings, and really now for all our programs that we produce. Last year we did 7 candidate forums. Again, we're just the one city. Most of those were with the League of Women Voters, but we do some additional ones as well. And then we last year did 344 community programs. We focus a lot on sports, a lot of high school sports especially. We work with just one high school, which is another thing that makes it a little easier for CTN, probably than my colleagues, where they're working with multiple high schools, trying to coordinate all of that. But we also do graduation. We do city updates. We work really close with the city, as you can imagine, being a city entity. Lots of city information that we get out to our residents. And then also we do both city and high school concerts throughout the year. We do festival coverage. Coon Rapids has a big 4th of July celebration, so we do parades and things like that. And then we also, it's more our communication team works with CTN, and we do business spotlights also to showcase usually 7 or 8 businesses throughout the year. And then most of us do, we have, I think all of us have that listed: franchise oversight, legislation, regulation, community involvement. Those first 3 are the, I'll sarcastically say, the fun part of our job. Franchise oversight, that is working directly with the cable TV operator. We'll get into more how we're funded a little bit later, but we handle complaints and questions and things like that from our cable provider in our area. All of us, I believe, are served by Comcast, is the current cable provider for all of our areas. But and then legislation, regulation, and then the community involvement. That's, I think, the fun part of our jobs is getting information to our residents and knowing and covering our community. So I'm going to try to keep it short. I'll move it right along to Danika with North Metro TV.
Sure. North Metro TV, we partner with 7 cities. It's Blaine, Circle Pines, Centerville, Ham Lake, Lexington, Lino Lakes, and Spring Lake Park. In there are 4 Senate districts, 3 school boards, about half the county board, and 7 city councils. And with that, we covered 309 government meetings in 2024. Those were live. We do all of the cities' city council meetings and then any of their advisory boards that they would like us to cover. Some cities want their park boards covered and some don't, for instance, but almost everyone has their planning commission, city council. Lino Lakes does an environmental board. Every city's a little different, but we put all of those on demand on our website. We close caption them, and then we also transcribe them for our cities and have them in an audio podcast for people who like to listen more than watch. As far as government, our local elections, we hosted 32 one-on-one candidate interviews in our studio in 2024 with some of the groups I listed earlier: school districts, county board, city council, House seats, Senate seats. And then we also partnered with you, the League of Women Voters, and with the North Metro Mayors Association to tape another 10 candidate forums in the community. In those 32 and those 10 are included in our list of 454 community programs: news, sports, parades, features, graduations, a lot of the same stuff that Eric said. And then we also are involved with franchise oversight and legislation and community involvement.
Okay, I think it's my turn. Karen George with QCTV. QCTV has been around since 1981, when our 4 cities, Andover, Anoka, Champlin, and Ramsey, decided they could do more together than they could separately. And that really has what has guided our organization, 40 some years later. You can see across Anoka County and again, Champlin and Hennepin County, we cross 2 counties, 1 large school district, 3 high schools. Lots of action to keep us going. The government meetings is a core service that we do. Our mission at QCTV is connecting communities through local programming valued by residents. And as you all said, as we were opening up tonight, watching government meetings and staying abreast of what's happening in your communities is really important. So we do 194 government meetings, live, video on demand, archived, and we also initiated closed captioning 2 years ago. As everyone else has mentioned, we work collaboratively with you and other organizations to conduct candidate forums. Thank you very much. And I think it was a year or so ago, under Catherine Lenneberg's leadership, we did a PSA series for the League of Women Voters. I'm going to just press pause right now as we talk about elections to acknowledge Leslie Sauer, who is on the call. She is the QCTV staff member who makes sure that these types of programs on topics and issues get out in our community. And we just want to thank the League of Women Voters, ABC, for allowing QCTV to be your partner to bring that. So thank you. As others, we have a lot of community programs that have a wide spectrum of local interest, 324 programs at QCTV. I would like to call out that the Post was launched in 2020. That is our weekly news program. We pivoted, did a lot of remote work. I know my colleagues did that too. We pioneered light productions, which we are still using today. But specifically in the Post, that has an average of 5 news stories each week that then get pushed out onto social media. Again, that's really increased our reach. And then finally, franchise oversight legislation, regulation, community involvement. We'll talk more about legislation later. But before we move on, we thought it would be great to show you a video. This one is representative of what QCTV does, but my colleagues have similar highlight reels. So Pat, could you play that? Thank you, Pat. You can see that one of our distribution models, we all three use YouTube, and we have monetized our channel, so we did have an ad pop up there. I'll turn it over now to the next slide and Eric.
Thanks, Karen. Good segue on the YouTube channel. Yeah, we all use YouTube. We also do monetize a little bit as well, just more on our community side. I decided, obviously, our city programming and government meetings and things like that, we don't monetize. I don't think any of our stations do. But one little difference also between for CTN and Coon Rapids compared to the other two, they have more platforms and more outlets, I think, that they reach their subscribers. We focused really on YouTube and push all of our people from Facebook and other social to watch it on YouTube. I think all three of us agree it's been great to have social media, mainly for the stats, the analytics. For most of us, we don't have Nielsen ratings on our cable TV channels that we've had for, most of those 40 years that Karen mentioned. So when things started going online and having like a YouTube channel or on websites or Facebook or wherever we put our programming, it's great to get the stats kind of like the ones you're seeing now. It reinforces the amount of people that watch all of our programming for all our stations. So we have 12,400 subscribers. That's, again, we push everybody to YouTube, and a little over 383,000 views in 2024. It's always funny. We all kind of joke a little bit. You never know what kind of video it is that may become your most popular, what, gets picked up, that type of thing. So our Facebook, we do use Facebook a lot. The city does as well, but we have our own city or CTN Facebook account as well. We've seen a big 187% jump from 2023 to 2024. We also do, this is more our impact slide. So we do a lot of 104 video segments, pretty much about twice a week, realizing that works out too, that focus on community information for our residents. And then all of us, I think we're pretty fortunate here. I think this group, we're lucky to have, I think, 3 outstanding producers. You saw in Karen's video, and we all do things like that. But we've been fortunate to also get recognized with some overall excellence awards. 7 of the last years from NATOA, which is our national organization. It's mostly government and joint powers producers that recognize those each year. So with that, I'll pass it along to Danika at North Metro.
All right. Well, like Eric said, we have a lot of different distribution mechanisms, and part of that is because cable subscribers are decreasing, but we still want to get our message out to people. So as cable subscribers decrease, we find new ways to reach people where they're at. Our Facebook reach, we got to about 660,000 people in 2024. Our YouTube channel had more than 500,000 views. We had more than 125,000 people on our website. And then I think this stat must be different than our main website because it goes through a different kind of portal, because we had 200,000 people watch programming on our website at the same time. And one stat that I found particularly interesting was in our city meetings that we cover, one of our cities, our most watched city, received more than 9,500 live city meeting views in 2024. And that's people tuning in as the meeting is happening. And one of the meetings that they had got more than 2,700 on-demand views after the fact. It was quite the year in that city, but it was a great way for us to be around and help get the message out, because obviously people were interested and they cared, and we helped set up overflow rooms at the city hall so more people who could fit into the chambers could still be there and speak in person. So we're really proud of being able to help out with that this year. And I'll turn it over to Karen.
Thank you. Similar to my colleagues at QCTV, we had just under 1 million engaged online with QCTV in the past year. Again, we have a YouTube channel. We did not launch our YouTube channel until 2021, I think. So we've grown that with 245,000 views. And our website, where we have a lot of our information and continue to have a robust interactive website, which we're currently in rebuild, is 121,000 website visits in a year. So we certainly engage with our community. The Post, which is our weekly news program, Wednesdays live at 2 p.m. We have 43 episodes that we did in the last year. Again, at least 5 news stories each week, as well as we added a community calendar to keep people updated on what's happening in their communities to go out and participate in. And like my colleagues, we are high caliber quality programming, whether it be a festival, a sporting event, or a program that we're going to be doing tomorrow from QCTV, which is the State of the Cities with the Area Chamber of Commerce. So we really want to be known as a go-to source for local news and activities. And that's been rewarded with acknowledgement of overall excellent award from 2 national organizations. In the case of QCTV, we submitted, across the spectrum of the programming that we offer, and that was taken in whole. And we've received the overall excellence from the Alliance for Community Media and NATOA. And we've shared that with our fellow stations around the state of Minnesota and nationally. I know Eric, I believe, won it also. I think we tied one year. So a little bit of friendly rivalry. Next slide. So I'm going to do a little deeper dive here because QCTV, we commissioned a scientifically valid subscriber survey. These are people who subscribe to cable in our 4 cities. Down at the bottom, you'll see the methodology. Morris Leatherman Company did this survey back in May of 2024. And although cable subscribers have declined, results show double and triple engagement with residents over the 2016 survey results, which is what we last did. Peter Leatherman did a recap of this survey in detail. That is available by watching our September 2024 Cable Commission meeting, where you can actually hear him talk about all these stats. But I pulled out a few for you to be thinking about. One is that the survey reports increased viewer awareness engagement. 88 reported watching QCTV frequently or occasionally. 38% value information about their city via video, which is a big jump, that people want to be getting information via video more so than just reading or listening. and 66 are aware of QCTV, our programs, and our services. So we were very, very pleased with the results of what people reported to us. We have it broken down in two columns. First, the community channel on the left. Parades and festivals came out on top, 46% share of people watching that. Again, 40% share watching the Post weekly news program, 35% local sports, and just a percentage point behind, 34% elections. So the work that the League of Women Voters and other organizations do regarding elections is still critical for our viewers at QCTV. And then on our community channel for our online presence, 52% go out to our website to see the video on demand archives, and 36% report watching live streaming of any type of programming, whether it be our sports, our weekly news, parades and festivals, and other things. We do segment and have city channels that just get narrowcast into each individual city. In those, our respondents said 45% watch the Post weekly news program on their city channel, and 29% report watching city meetings. And when you push that programming over online, 55% are tuning in for video on demand of city programs, and 23% are doing live streaming. There's a whole lot of rich data in here. I'm happy to answer any particular questions either at the end of our presentation or outside of our conversation tonight. But I do want to leave you with these programs and the stations that we lead are valued in our communities. And these numbers prove it, and it is a scientifically valid survey that is projectionable across the QCTV viewing area. So again, if people start to question the value, here are some stats that can be used. Next slide.
Hi, I'm the cable company.
And I'm Air City. Over the years, the cable company and I have made agreements to give them access to my streets so they can provide a state-of-the-art cable system to
me, a resident of your city.
That's right. And in return for those agreements, cable company provides funding that I can use for many critical things, such as
me, your local community cable channel. I connect the city to every resident. As access to local newspapers have dwindled, I'm one of the few sources for local information, like city and school board meetings, local events, special programming, and local information you can't find anywhere else.
And the funding and local channels that we receive in return for our agreement with cable company are so important in keeping my residents informed and engaged.
It's a fantastic way for local residents to stay in touch with their community. So thank you, your city and cable company, for providing funding for local channel and for providing me with the diversity of information that strengthens our community.
Log on to learn more about what your local cable channel does for your community.
So we get our money, not from the average taxpayer, but from mostly the cable company. And I'll keep this brief because I'm looking at the clock and I think we only have till 7:30. But most of our money comes through franchise fees. Basically, the cable company is running their cable lines. They're running them through the public right-of-way. And that shouldn't be free. They're using your land, they're using city land to get their product to you. So in my case, we get 5% of the gross revenue from the cable company in the cities that we work with. And that money, you can imagine is directly tied to how many cable subscribers there are, because 5% of a lot of money is more than 5% of less money. We also get some money through PEG channel fees. PEG stands for Public Educational and Government. And this can be different depending on how your station is, depending on your agreement with Comcast. In my case, we get a fixed amount of dollars per cable subscriber. We get $3.30. Now you'll see a franchise fee and a PEG fee on your cable bill if you have it. Comcast is responsible for paying the franchise fee, but they do go ahead and pass that along to the subscriber, and the PEG fee is a subscriber-based fee as well.
Thank you. In addition, because these are locally negotiated franchise agreements, a difference for QCTV is our franchise fee is a percentage of gross revenues and our PEG fee is a percentage of gross revenues. So we also negotiated a number of years ago an equipment grant that is paid annually and does have a CPI inflator on it for us.
And
Eric?
I'll mention a little bit of, about the other revenues, since we do a lot of it, probably the most in the country. When we first saw, probably around 2006, 2007, a lot of our subscribers started dropping. So CTN started looking at how could we do other, outside revenue generating options. We've done sponsorships in the past and some other things, but we really focused on rentals and contract for services with our TV production truck. All three of our organizations are very fortunate to have TV production trucks that we've used in the field to produce games, parades, concerts, and other events. So we basically rent that out and started, like I mentioned, back in 2007. We did a few things, and eventually the St. Paul Saints is kind of the thing we're most known for. And the cool part and how we all work together, we share programming. All three of our groups have shared St. Paul Saints while we were getting hired to do those. Most of the time they were on community television stations. Eventually, like the last few years, when they moved to CHS, it's been 75 home games, so that's a lot. But most of those we get to share on our community cable side. And then we have projects, especially now with the funding loss. We also work with St. Thomas on their football games, the University of St. Thomas, that is. And then our other two big ones are snowcross and off-road. So it doesn't quite equal what we get in franchise fees, but it is catching up quickly, mainly because of the decline in franchise fees, which we'll talk about here coming up. So next slide.
Thank you. What this slide is, how did we get here? Why are we seeing decline in cable TV? This chart was done, study was done in June of 2023, I believe, is the on the slide. And what this is showing is that streaming has a 40% market share and cable is down to 27%. This is different. The streaming overtaking cable happened in 2022. We'd watched it ranking up. The little bit of history is Minnesota Statute 238, which has cable franchising mandated across the state for the use of the public right-of-way, was initiated in 1973. This law has been around a long time. The cable TV subscriptions peaked at about 40% of the market share. And again, it's just interesting by this chart, now that streaming has overtaken it, they have a 40% market penetration. Again, there was steady growth in cable until 2013 when we started to see the decline. And most notably, us locally can report, we saw that dip trend occur in 2017. And we've seen steady declines due to subscriber shed and streaming competitiveness. So this is how we got here with some of our challenges with funding. Next slide.
And I'll run through some of the different options that, our three groups are part of MACTA, which is a state organization. And we basically looked at three different options through state legislation. The first one listed is a franchise broadband to use our right-of-ways, as Danika mentioned earlier. The cable company, just like the power company and other utilities, run cables through the cities right away. And basically, as I put here, due to a loophole, broadband service providers currently don't pay any franchise fees to our cities, but they do get to use the valuable city right away that cities and taxpayers then have to subsidize for that. So we had a broadband franchising bill last year in the session, and it was equal access to broadband, so that as I mentioned earlier, all three of us are available for cable subscribers when they have issues with the cable company. We handle calls and try to resolve those issues, but it's technically only supposed to be on the cable TV side. So we're trying to be able to help and franchise and make sure their build outs, because we have all of our cities are seeing outside fiber companies, fiber to the home, and other providers that are coming into our cities. And that way we'd be able to help them make sure they're following proper protocols when they're building in our cities, not picking certain areas, things like that. So that is the one that we made great progress for last year, but we didn't get it passed, very close. We also were looking at a streaming service, and there's a link to the bill that is added on there. I know we're running a little short of time too, so I want to keep rolling along here. The fees for streaming service is another option, which would basically put like a PEG fee or a franchise fees to help support our operations on the streaming providers, much like Hulu, YouTube, Prime Video, all of those, as people are switching from watching on cable to, as Karen showed in the last slide, on the streaming services now. And now the one that we're currently pushing this upcoming session is looking at a state appropriation, which would be more of a stopgap funding option to help support community media stations, provide our PEG programming, which is public, educational, and government. And this is similar to the state funding that TPT and NPR receive through legacy funds. So that is the one we're most hopeful and focused on. I will also share that we also work closely, MACTA that is, with the League of Minnesota Cities. And we're working with all our cities because our cities are all seeing declines, or almost all seeing declines in cable revenue. And so the third item is more or less just to help us until we can get probably the franchising broadband passed, which would be a little more difficult this session, but for number one. So again, the state appropriation, the stopgap funding is really what we're working on as our trade organization this year. Next slide.
So we're talking to you today because we would love to have your continued support, and we'd be honored if you'd once again support us this year like you have in the past. Here you can see the simple text of the bill, which is just to grant some money to PEG stations. We can go to the next slide. So we would love if you would continue to take time like you're doing today to learn more about community TV and MACTA's effort. We would love for you to consider signing another letter of support like you did last year in support of our bill. If we get to the point where we have committee hearings, if you think there's someone in your organization who could speak to the value of community TV and be willing to take the trip to the Capitol, that would be truly wonderful. And also, as you talk to your elected officials this year, let them know that you see value in what we do. You know, on the state level, on the local level, what we do makes a difference in elections, in cities, and to people, you and your neighbors. Next slide. So here's some letters of support that were issued in previous years. I know we got one from the League of Women Voters Minnesota. You can see a White Bear Lake area one there. And we have these for you to look at if you would consider writing something similar. Next slide.
So we want to thank you for your attention. I know that there are a lot of issues vying for your attention, but we know that you're a great supporter of community television, and we really look forward to your support and working collaboratively to keep us strong and viable in the coming years. I know I'll tune in with Leslie right now. I see a number of questions, and you just let us know how you want us to proceed with questions.
I can go ahead and just start with reading off some of the questions that we received in the chat. And I'll just go ahead and start with, could you talk a little bit more about PEG, public education, and government program? Is this a legal mandate, and how do you fulfill this goal?
I'll kick us off, and then Danika and Eric can chime in. The definitions of PEG, or Public Educational Government Access, are federally mandated in the Cable Act. And each of those items have been negotiated in our local franchise agreements. So public access is just what we call community programming. Educational access, at least for QCTV, is the school board meetings, channel 18 in our case. And then we do other educational programming. We also count sports towards things we do to support our schools, and of course their election coverage. Eric or Danika?
The only thing I would add, technically, all three of us do pretty much that same thing. The community, the education, and government. I know you only have to do one of them to be a PEG operator. So if the city decided they just wanted to do government, they could do that. But we choose, just like the others, to do educational because it's important, with the schools and the sports coverage that we do. And the same way, the P, we do a lot of community stuff, all the community information, the community events, all of that, because that's, what we've done for 30 years, and we enjoy doing that and bringing that to our residents.
The next question, is there public input besides surveys on what should be covered? Maybe more school concerts, less sports? Is there any type of input process for that?
On our end, our input is what we've seen people like in the past and what people are asking for. School concerts get a little tricky because usually the school doesn't secure the cable casting rights or the live streaming rights. So if the music is copyrighted, we can't play it over the TV. So that is a reason why we can't do more concerts and plays. We would love to, but those rights are expensive and someone would need to pay for them. And we do not have it in our budget to do so, but if the school wanted to secure the rights, we'd be happy to.
Another question is, what is the role of your governing board, and do you include any citizens besides elected officials?
I'll take that one to piggyback off of the previous question. At QCTV, our governing board is very involved in setting the vision and mission and annual objectives of QCTV. Since I've been there, we've gone through 2 full 5-year strategic plans, and we will be initiating another one. In that process, we get staff input, board input. We will certainly use our cable subscriber survey data that we just took. And then in the past, we've also done some, emailed surveys or online surveys of various stakeholders. Stakeholders would be organizations like you, the Chamber Report. We do the District Court Show. So some of our regular stakeholders we would be involved with. The second half of your question was around government and the commission being involved. The second question.
Do you include any citizens besides elected officials?
For QCTV, our governing documents say that each of our member cities appoints 2 commissioners. There are no restrictions on those commissioners. They can be anyone, elected or an appointed official, a resident, or even a non-resident. So it just says that the city gets to appoint 2 people to my board seats. Danika and Eric?
Yeah, ours works a little different. Our joint powers agreement and bylaws call for each of our 7 cities to send 1 member of their city council to serve on our cable commission. And so sometimes that's a mayor, sometimes that's city council. And those bylaws were established before I was around, so I can't speak to why they came out that way. But we also have we call it our operations committee. It's our 7 city managers who get together and chat with us about how we're doing. They're more of an advisory board that makes recommendations to the cable commission. but it's lovely to hear from all these different feedbacks on a regular basis.
And I'm also different because as a city entity, it's pretty much the city council and the city manager that, you know, oversee things. But obviously we get requests, all of us get requests, you know, for things to get covered, and we always, you know, try to cover what we can.
So the next question, we have two that are kind of along the same line. We need access to local programming. If our cable providers get pushed out by a la carte streaming service, what options remain for local programming? And I'll kind of piggyback off of that one. It was Karen, you talked a little bit about, and maybe you can elaborate, but the league has also had conversations about the decline in the role of local newspapers, and what do you see as the role of community television in providing local news and event coverage?
Thank you. These are great questions. I'll start with the decline of local newspapers. We still have our ABC newspapers. They are still viable, and we are thankful that they are part of our news landscape. I know that there are other citizen journalism efforts going on that are in a social media or email environment. I think, Wes, I follow you a lot and get a lot of information from you, so thank you. And we're just another partner in creating those news options. Again, we just launched our weekly, news program in 2020. So we are trying to fill that void, but nothing can really replace people really being involved and aware of what's going on in their local community. And we find the people that do want to do that tune into our programming. So what we can tell you is that in my case, Comcast is the cable television provider, and they are responding to consumer desire and demand. And the consumers are really driving an industry change, which is the linear format of cable where you tune in at 7 o'clock to see a program has given way to time shift, and you don't have to record it. You can just tune on and pick up a program whenever you want to view it, or binge watch it, which is a newer term that's come about. And our stations have responded by offering YouTube and robust video on demand archives. So we've also responded to that need. But specifically with the cable operators, they are using the same wire that is in the right-of-way, the public right-of-way, that has been delivering cable television, in our case, for 40 some years. And they are now naming their product a broadband product, and then they're aggregating all of these streaming services through other technologies, but it is still using the same resources that are in our public right-of-ways, and they don't have to pay a fee for that. Again, that's what the 24 legislation was going after with the Equitable Access to Broadband Act. We really think that is the best solution for Minnesota, as well as the nation, because it provides local control of our local public right-of-ways. But the base of the question is, what happens when everything becomes a streaming service? What happens to our local programming? We all are committed to delivering local programming, but it does take funds to do. And that's why we're working so hard to get an influx of new funding or modernizing that funding structure in some way. And I'll turn it back to Eric and Danika.
I'm glad you covered that great, Karen, especially basically the cable company only pays franchise fees on their cable product. So as they switch people over into their streaming service, then they get free use by delivering the internet, and it's no longer a cable product. So that's the whole loophole that we see cable providers switching to, because all they have to do is say it's a streaming service, because technically the cable boxes already really are much like a Roku, is just transcribing the digital feeds. So that's our big concern, because then all our cities are out of tens of millions of dollars around the state of Minnesota that help pay us to do even, our government meetings, our base government meetings, our election coverage, our candidate forums, all those things. that is our big scare. And that's why we're, as Karen mentioned, we really need that equal access to broadband to get through at some point, hopefully in the near future.
So have a number of questions. The next one, it feels like it's easier to get specific number of views off websites and YouTube and channels. And how do you track your cable viewership numbers to know that that side is decreasing? Is that just through subscribership, or is there other ways that that is tracked?
Well, it's very expensive if you want to do a study as to who's watching when. And I think we've said it, but we're running out of money. So we don't usually do those studies. But we do get subscriber numbers from Comcast. They're, at least for my organization, they're required to give them to us annually. So I have tracking data back to as far back as this document on my predecessor's computer goes, 25 years of cable subscribers, and they went up till about 2017, and now they're not doing nearly as well. So that's how we track, because we know on TV we can't have more viewers than subscribers, but also, people aren't watching time-based television like Karen said. People are watching on demand, so probably more people are watching off cable than on cable.
And along with that, with the stats that you get from YouTube and social media, what are some of the most watched programs?
My most watched last year was a very quick news story on Asia Mall, the expansion coming to Northtown Mall. Within 3 days, it had 60,000 views, and I don't know how that happened, but it just got shared and it went absolutely nuts. So that was our absolutely most popular online video from last year.
I know I joked about this. You never know what's going to go viral. I know years ago, apparently there is a CTN in Vietnam. And so somehow we got roped into that and we were like, where are all these hits coming from? And it was Vietnam, but you never know. But last year, surprising enough, we do, Minnesota hockey, high school hockey, Minnesota football, all these well-known established sports. And actually, just a few years ago, for the first time, we started covering bowling, the bowling team, and we had a bowling video that we did coverage. We had an outstanding announcer that apparently was known, former coach and I think is a pro bowler, or a top state pro bowler, do the color commentary, and that got picked up and did it remarkably well. And I know it was one of our top 2 or 3 last year. So we make sure we do bowling every year, at least one bowling match for the local high schools.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. It's, a few years ago, we had something go viral nationally, which, a rodent got out on the field of a Friday night football game, and that clip just, took off. But I do have a little saying when I talk to my commissioners and we're talking about stats, and Danika talked earlier about a city government meeting, having a lot of views. And what I tell my commissioners is, sometimes it's not necessarily a good thing when you're getting a lot of views. Sometimes it's an indication that there's a controversial subject in your community, which can be challenging for you as elected officials and people who care about your community. But in the end, what those numbers do tell us is that people are engaged and they do want to be involved when it's an issue they're concerned about. And we provide that transparency.
Thank you again, viewers, for your interest and for joining us this evening. Thank you, Karen, Danika, and Eric, for sharing information on how community television works and how they are funded and the role they play in our communities.